and I also intend to play some Monster Hunter Rise this weekend. So let's go ahead and get into the topic of the show, one of the topics of the show, Monster Hunter Rise. So this game is considered the sixth main installment of the Monster Hunter franchise coming after Monster Hunter World. So I originally played Monster Hunter World when it came out. I thought it was a great time. The graphics were cool. It was on PS4. I played online with a couple of buddies. It was a lot of fun. That game was cool. I sort of got distracted and couldn't invest enough time into it. I spent about 40 or 50 hours, which I know is laughable in the face of Monster Hunter pros who go out there and get every single gear for every single weapon, for every single armor set, you know? But essentially, what Monster Hunter boils down to is it's a very intricate monster combat game where you're tracking down these monsters. And since Monster Hunter World, I believe they've made it a completely open map with no loading zones, and there's also there's more streamlined ways of tracking these monsters. I haven't quite noticed that in Monster Hunter Rise yet. For instance, there was whatever that bug was that just gave you a straight shot to the monster. Essentially, it would trail the monster, and that was super awesome and streamlined. That's why I liked Monster Hunter World. But it was also, so essentially this game, because it's made by Capcom, which again, this is one of their most popular franchises, by the way. You can really see their sort of fighting game-esque combat in it, that it really wants you to understand the combat system as opposed to just mashing buttons, which a lot of action role-playing games can lead to. Each weapon has a different fighting style. Each monster has different patterns that you need to learn to dodge and work around and take advantage of. There are different states in which the monsters can be in. They will run from you. It's a whole thrill of the hunt type situation, and once you really master that fight down, you become a pretty well-oiled machine. That's what we like to say on this show, I guess. It's a Vaughn saying, even though it's not even his saying, but it's you become this death ball of awesome power, and it's really cool. It's all about, I'm describing Monster Hunter as a whole right now. We'll get into Monster Hunter Rise as an individual game, but you build up all your gear. You end up harvesting things from the monsters once you defeat them to level up your gear and make it look really cool too. Like the designs of the gear are awesome because it's all inspired by the monsters that you defeat, which are also incredibly well designed. They're super cool looking monsters. And then the cool part about the game is you have to gather resources to make potions and antidotes and traps and all these sorts of other crazy things, bombs, that type of stuff, at the hub world or during the hunt, and these are vital to defeating some of the more difficult monsters. And you can capture the monsters alive. This is related to certain missions, and you can get better rewards that way. And of course, there's also a currency system in the game. So it's a really cool game or game franchise that is incredibly popular in Japan and has just become very popular in America, I would say, after Monster Hunter World. Of course, there were people playing Monster Hunter games before that, but Monster Hunter World it is one of Capcom's best-selling games, period. So I think it might be their best-selling game because they finally broke into the American audience. So this game coming out on Switch a very popular system right now, is super great for them in terms of sales. So I really wanted to pick it up because, you know, there hasn't been much on the Switch as of late aside from Bravely Default 2. And I think Nintendo Switch is just gearing up. We'll talk about Nintendo Switch Pro next. But yeah, so this new game is running on the RE engine, which Resident Evil 7 was built upon. And it looks great for a Nintendo Switch game. I can't believe they squeezed out this much power in a handheld system. It looks very good. You can tell there's some jagged edges here and there. It doesn't really get blurry, however. And I played both on handheld and on docked mode. And I think the graphics do hold up. The art style is there. The characters look cool. I guess you can see sort of in the character designs, their facial expressions and things. There's a little, you know, not blurry, but less detailed faces. But that doesn't really come into play because what you're really doing in this game is you're tracking these monsters, and some of the environments have a little muddy textures, I will say, because the grassland areas, you know, they don't look that great. But it's a Switch game, so you have to take that into account when you're playing it if you're coming off of Monster Hunter World. It's not going to look as good as Monster Hunter World, but I'll tell you, it does look pretty. In handheld mode, when this game is in action, it does look pretty close. I'll say that. So when you're in action, you're not really looking at the graphics too in depth, and you're all in that fight. So the monsters, as you would come to expect, still have all that characteristic and awesome gameplay, and new, like when you come across a new monster, you don't really know what's going to happen. So that sort of excitement that you get when you play Monster Hunter is absolutely there for every single monster, and all the designs are super cool. So I really like that about Monster Hunter World. It doesn't really give you too much of a storyline. I don't really care about the story, for instance. I mean, there is a story. I don't really need to get into it. You'll figure it out when you play it. But it's like they just throw you into it, and it's pretty cool. They're like, here's a mission, go kill this monster. And you're like, what? That I have to kill this monster? And then you go on the mission and you find it, and you're like, wait, this is a crazy monster. You go fight it. I don't know. It's a lot of fun. And then obviously things ramp up. You complete your first hunt. You're like, that was sick. And I don't know. It is a very fun gaming franchise. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the combat for newcomers. It can be a little frustrating because it is not a button mashy game. You have to time your attacks well, and you have to, or you're going to be defeated by these monsters. You're going to start taking damage. There's a stamina bar that decreases. I've noticed that the stamina bar decreases because you get hungry, for instance. The stamina bar does decrease a lot faster than in Monster Hunter World. I've noticed that, but that's because I think they wanted to balance all the new things that they added to it, which are movement related. So they added wire bugs. So this game is really cool in that it allows your character to become much more mobile. You can still dodge roll and things like that, but it allows your character to become much more mobile in terms of vertical movement. So you can jump up now and latch on to the monsters and essentially ride them and use the monsters to attack other monsters. Because I think that's what they wanted. Monster Hunter always had monsters fighting each other while you were coming across them sometimes. But now you can take control of the monsters with the wire bugs and fight the other monsters. So I think that's a really cool idea. Excuse me as I have some tea. It is the morning, after all. So I would have to say I definitely suggest you get this game if you have a Nintendo Switch. if you liked Monster Hunter World. If you're looking to get into Monster Hunter, it can be overwhelming, but I say stick with it if you like action role-playing games that are a little more complex. There are a lot of systems to learn, and it doesn't do the best job of explaining all of them, but that would also take hours. So I think they really leave it up to the player to delve into these crazy deep systems, and I kind of respect that, but I also... It's like Tekken, right? Tekken has these really complex situations that you can be in, and the game has zero tutorial, so it sort of just leaves it up to the player to figure out, oh, did you know you can backdash cancel, the Korean backdash? Did you know that that's going to change your gameplay, just simply learning this one technique, right? So Monster Hunter World, or in Monster Hunter Rise, has a similar situation. Like, did you know you can craft this thing? Oh, did you know you can use it in this situation? Or if there's a whole combo system in the game as well, and you have to figure it out through trial and error, because like a good fighting game, or like any fighting game, all your actions have a fixed trajectory and a fixed startup frames and fixed ending frames, and I don't think they do a fixed damage. I think it's related to sharpness of your weapon and probably the level of your weapon, but so that type of thing is definitely coming from Capcom's history with fighting games. So I think that's really cool to see that, and the combat can feel clunky if you're not if you're coming from a game that is a little more button mashy, but it is well planned out, and once you understand it and how it works, the game is actually really cool. So I highly suggest it. Obviously, all the Monster Hunter heads out there already got it, but if you're trying to pick this game up, just know that there's actually a demo, and I would suggest you play the demo first to get a better feel of the game in terms of how it actually feels to play.